everybody, to the latest episode of Rock Talk with the DocRocker. I am Jeff Bonomo, and I am joined, like I always am, with the DocRocker himself, Danton Arlotto. And Danton, we have a guest tonight in the Zoomiverse.
We do have a guest tonight.
It's
Can you introduce him,
really
Jeff?
Good friends from way back when, an excellent guitar player. His name is Brendan Patrick Silliman, and he is going to join us tonight to talk about none other than probably one of the best prog metal bands ever, Dream Theater. Brendan,
I'm pumped.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, you were my introduction to Dream Theater ages ago. I think they had 3 albums out. So yeah, and they're what John Petrucci is what inspired me to keep playing guitar, and I tried my hand at Berkeley thanks to John Petrucci. And what more can be said about them? They're influences in many ways that a lot of people won't even understand unless you do sort of play an instrument and geek out, sort of like we.
Yeah, they're definitely musicians.
Yes.
And that's what I love about them too. And even though there's a bit of an age gap between us, you know, it's funny how much we all really have in common as far as our adoration and appreciation for this group. And we've talked about Dream Theater before on previous episodes. You know, we have our nice little homework bit where we share albums with each other, you know, Jeff and I, and we just talked about them last week. We talked about an album that I think we're going to talk about today quite a bit too, which I'll save that for when we get there. But yeah, so we've definitely talked a lot of Dream Theater. You know, a couple weeks ago we did our whole first react to the new Liquid Tension Experiment song coming out. Passage Over Time. So yeah, lots to be said about these guys. So let's get into it. So right before we started filming, you guys were sharing some reminiscence of, you know, how you first kind of got into the band and, like, you know, what that whole experience was like for you guys. Because if I'm right, you guys were like in a band together, right?
Yes.
That was all part of the
Double
this
projects.
Yes.
Double projects in the 90s. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit about the history of Dream Theater real quick. So for people that may not know even who this band is, Dream Theater was formed in 1985. That's quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
under the name Majesty by John Petrucci, John Mayung, and Mike Portnoy, while they attended the Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, and they all dropped out pretty much to do the band full time.
All Berklee dropouts.
Yeah. Portnoy left the band in 2010, I believe. He's replaced by Mike Mangini. Portnoy was a drummer. James Labry has been the lead singer of Dream Theater since 1991. He replaced Troy Dominici. Dream Theater had 3 keyboard players. Kevin Moore was the first one. Derek Shrinian was the second in 1995. And then he was replaced by Jordan Rudess in 1999, I believe.
I think maybe a little sooner than that.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I don't remember.
He's the keyboard player.
He's their current standing keyboard player.
Yeah. They've had 14 studio albums, sold over 12 million records worldwide, and they received 2 Grammy nominations. So there's the history in a nutshell of Dream Theater.
Yeah, and fun little side note, you know, concerning their keyboard players. You know, you mentioned Derek Shrinian, and with him being a former keyboard player and Mike Portnoy being a former drummer, they both have kind of gone off in the recent years and started their own little side project, Sons of Apollo, which is another upcoming prog metal act that is fantastic, absolutely fantastic, and it's got a whole bunch of like ex-Dream Theater members, and I thought that was really interesting because I'm a big Portnoy fan. He's a big reason why I like Dream Theater so much. I know he was a big driving force behind a lot of the writing when he was in the band. And there was definitely a bit of a change after he left that, you know, we'll talk about that too. Yeah, I think there's definitely a major rift that's created there for a lot of fans when Portnoy departed. And that's something we could kind of get into because I think it merits being talked about. So
well, you were talking about like the generational thing, and I just want to mention this quick. I was in a store and I saw a guy with a shirt, a Dream Theater shirt, and it said 30 years of, you know, something on it, and I almost cried. That punched me right in the mouth.
Yeah, well, Images and Words. What was that? 1991 did that came out?
92.
So that's just about 30 years old. So maybe it was like a 30th anniversary of the band, maybe a couple of years ago.
Dream and Day Unite.
Yeah,
that's 89, I think, if I'm right.
Yeah, this is only about a year ago I saw this shirt, and I was ready to cry. I
Or you
realized
feel
how
it's getting a
old I
little
was.
old, huh?
Hey, nothing wrong with things that are 30 years old.
No.
Nothing wrong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's young to me.
Well, okay, let's talk about first impressions, Brendan. Give me your story about your first impressions of Dream Theater. When did it really, hook you?
Well, I think we were saying earlier, and I'll say it with kind of the same little story edge. I was hanging out with you, and I can mention him, Mark and Trady.
Sure.
We were in his car, and I was recovering from the night before, and I had heard Pull Me Under before that. I think I'd heard it with you actually, but I hadn't heard the whole album. And Pull Me Under, it didn't I liked it. It is a solid song, but it didn't jump out at me. But when I heard Take the Time,
oh, that's one of my favorites.
On Mark's car, that quickly became my favorite song of all time.
Oh yeah, that's a good candidate. That bridge, do 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 do. It was, oh, it's so catchy. I love it.
So interesting. There was so much stuff going on in it, and then there's this weird keyboard guitar harmony in the middle of the musical breakdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could do it with my mouth, but I've learned it. It took me the longest time to learn it on guitar because it's very awkward. And I was just amazed at how easily those guys were able to do that sort of, Steve Morse and Kansas style harmonies with multiple instruments. And when I heard that, I was just blown away. That was my moment. And then, of course, it just builds from there. You have Metropolis, which that musical breakdown was just mind blowing. And then you have Learning to Live, and it was just fantastic. It was just an amazing realization, to hear that. And I'm in the back of his car, with a hangover, but it was like, wow, okay, here's an album I'm going out and buying, and I'm going to try and learn it. And at the time, I really couldn't, because there was nothing really like it.
Yeah, we're going back like 25 years, and I'm pulling things up in my memory, in my old man memory. I remember you saying something along the lines to me of it's like a puzzle that needs to be solved. Like you sat down and you're like, I need to learn this. We at the time, the band that we were in, we were playing mainly alternative rock, 3/4 chord stuff, or we were doing classic rock, real simple radio friendly stuff. So you looked at it. I remember you telling me you're like, I'm looking at it as like a puzzle, like a game to be won, and then that was it, I guess. And then off you went.
Yeah. And, and from there, everything branched out. Like every single thing I listened to after that came kind of from that point of origin. Now you could say Rush. I started with Rush as a kid,
sure.
But from Dream Theater, because that actually took me into, speaking of what happened recently, Chick Corea and Return to Forever. I started playing them, but I also started playing Dixie Dregs because Steve Morse was a John Petrucci influence.
Sure.
Like you name it. The weird thing was, though, I bypassed what a lot of people, always ask. That Eddie Van Halen. It's like, I have no idea. It's so weird. Like Eddie Van Halen, I'm like, what, whatever. Like I know he's great, but I can't offer anything on his playing, So it's one of those weird things where I bypassed a certain genre to go right for this. So I can talk about John Petrucci, Robert Fripp, Steve Morse, but you go Eddie Van Halen, and I'm like, what, huh? It's so weird, but it's just the way I grew into it.
Yeah, everyone's got their own kind of musical journey.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of in the same boat with you, where I get right into a lot of currently famous artists that have been influenced by a lot of previous earlier generation greats. And it's for me, especially being a little younger than you guys, kind of for a lot of the big legends, I have to reach back to try to find that stuff.
Right.
And then even a lot of times upon discovering it, I'm like, I kind of just prefer, of course I'm going to have an appreciation for Jimi Hendrix, Eddie Van Halen, but I'm not going to go to listen to them as my go-to guitar players compared to the likes of Steve Vai or John Petrucci,
right?
Who are easily influenced.
You also you mentioned this before on our podcast, like you were into Dream Theater, then you went back to listen to Rush, and you're like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Same exact thing where,
Yeah.
and especially, seeing that Brendan is like, all right, well, I started with Rush and then from there kind of went to Dream Theater. That's kind of more the typical path a lot of people follow. For me, it was all that. Yeah, I did it all in reverse. And that's probably a big reason I never really got super into Rush. It's because I was spoiled by Dream Theater first. I've always liked Dream Theater better.
Well, and that does happen. I remember you saying on another episode, you have a friend who never even heard Kansas, and then you took him to a Kansas show.
Oh, that's right. This was
sudden,
right before the pandemic, and this was like a kid who's like not into like progressive music at all. I don't even really know what he was in. He was a friend of a friend, and it was like, all right, let's go. Because I'm going to go with this friend of mine. We're going to go, and he invited his friend, and I said, well, sure. What the hell? The more the merrier. Let's go. And then when we left the concert, I was like, so what did you think? And he was totally blown away.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to check these guys out. They're fantastic.
Yeah, it's like the pathology of interest, or what, you know what I mean?
It's amazing how, like, it all just comes down to people that are in your life. And, that's my whole exposure to Dream Theater is, I have two older brothers, and for a brief moment, they were like super into them right around the time when Jordan Rudess joined, and they got like super, super heavy. So like right around after like Scenes from a Memory, 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence. I want to say like right after Train of Thought came out, that was like one of my first albums. And I just, for me, like as like a 10-year-old kid in the early 2000s, this was like, what is this progressive metal thing? This is nuts. And for me, like I'm a piano guy. I was more, so like having something that had like keyboard playing in it, that had, and this was way before I ever heard of Kansas and got into them later on. And they became one of my favorite bands. But for me, like, like we're like the guitar players were the cool kids, and like metal was like the thing, and there was all this new metal and alternative metal, and there was no place for piano in any of that. And here comes a band like Dream Theater with all these like goofy cartoon sounds, and you got Jordan Rudess doing like all these crazy orchestral things on keyboard and piano, and like there's actual piano in it. For me, I was instantly hooked just on that alone. That was like the initial, like by default, oh, I totally like this. And then as I got more into it, and as I studied music more, like, oh, the more complex music really pleased me, because it's like something I can, like your experience of like having to crack this code and figure out this puzzle. That was the same thing for me, like sitting there listening to tracks on Train of Thought over and over again in my car, like trying to figure out how they're counting this, like what's this meter, and how do they get to this key, and what's going on with this unison spot between Petrucci and Rudess, and like I still do it to this day. I still can't wrap my head around them. They're
I found myself doing that last week all the time.
They're amazing.
When I was doing the Systematic Chaos album, I for some reason didn't really listen to it when it came out, so that was my homework last week. And I'm trying to count things. I'm like, I'm just gonna enjoy it, because it's
sometimes you just have to.
Sometimes
I'll never understand this. I'll never.
So let me say, my first impression of Dream Theater was, I know where I was. I was in the Luzerne County Community College parking lot. Pull Me Under was played on the radio, on campus radio. So I'm like, oh my God, this band sounds like Iron Maiden. Pull Me Under kind of has that kind of power metal Iron Maiden kind of vibe. So I was like, this is fantastic. It was probably 1992, maybe. And then I went and got the album, and honest to God, I didn't really like it at first, because there's a sax solo in the second song, and what is this? So I'm like, oh, it's not all heavy.
It's and like so I wasn't.
At that time, I wasn't in the right mindset to appreciate it until a couple years later, when I started jamming with Brendan, and then we started listening to this stuff more. I started to really appreciate it. Now, Images of War is my favorite album by Dream Theater. Still to this day, I love that album. Everything but the snare drum sound, I love it. And,
Well, a little side note, that sax solo was in there because the guy who owned the studio was the saxophone player for Spyro Gyro. Yeah, if you look it up, he's the sax player, and they were like, wow, that's really awesome, put that in there. It does seem a little out of place. But whatever.
I love it now.
Yeah,
I love it now. Back then, I didn't, as much. It just, if you hear Pull Me Under, you're like, okay, this band is going to be like this,
driving like late 80s, like super kind of. Yeah, I got you.
And they're not.
And it goes so far off the rails of that. Yeah.
Yeah, but they're more than that. They do have their heavy songs. They have their really soft songs. I mean, to me, Like they wrote the saddest song ever written, and that's Space Divest.
Oh, I love Space Divest.
You know,
that's
so
my
Kevin
favorite song on
Moore.
Awake. Oh,
yeah,
that's so
they
dark.
could do that. You know, they could be heavy as balls, and then they could write something really nice, or they could write something real sad. You know, speaking of Space Divest, that was a college project I did. I had to use a song and do imagery of a cemetery. So I shot all this creepy cemetery video, and I put Space Divest to it, and
Perfect.
it was
I would love to see
not a dry eye in the class, man. It was really cool. Maybe if I find the clip, I'll be running it right now as I'm talking about it.
Find it.
Yeah, I'll upload it on the channel.
I'd love to.
I have it somewhere. Yeah, it is. It's sitting on YouTube somewhere. I actually have the actual tape still, but yeah. That's my connection with Space Divest. I always thought that was, the saddest song ever written.
Yeah, I really like Kevin Moore's playing. He's one of my favorite keyboard players. Nothing against Jordan Rudess. I love him too, but I've always liked Kevin Moore. I always thought he lended a kind of more a much more balanced approach to really like let's do something like nice, real stable and solid and fluid, and give it this nice kind of orchestral feel.
I bought his solo album, and it's pretty good. I still like a couple of the songs on it. I wish I could find it. It's on CD. I'm sure I could just download it from somewhere, but it is floating around here somewhere. But it's actually not bad. I liked it.
I've never thought to check it out.
It's pretty cool.
I definitely
you can
should.
tell he's a minimalist. He's got like this Philip Glass thing going. Like,
oh God,
it's like a John Tesh, Philip Glass, and Chick Corea mashup, and that's what Kevin Moore is. So.
Really interesting flavors.
That actually sounds really interesting.
yeah, totally.
So, okay, Danton, that was your first brush with Dream Theater was through your older brothers, right?
Yeah.
And so you took to
and
it,
I just took to it,
and the keyboard.
Yeah. And then at that point, once I got old enough to like start hitting the mall and getting CDs and stuff every week, and I was like kind of collecting my own music catalog, that was like, all right, let's just go to Gallery of Sound and like pick up whatever Dream Theater albums I can find. So it was literally the same exact experience of going through the Maiden catalog, of like just grabbing a random album, and doing the whole thing out of sequence, out of order, just grabbing whatever was there and whatever just had a cool title or cool artwork, or just, if something I didn't have, all right, let's grab it and check it out. And I knew I wanted to get every album by these guys, so I did.
There we go again, talking about Iron Maiden.
I know.
About Iron Maiden.
Yes, so for those of you that haven't seen those, like for me, like it was right after like all the CD remasters came out, and you could get like the whole set, and it would like the spines of each disc would like make the original artwork for Iron Maiden's self-title. So yeah, but like for me, it was like, all right, first thing I got was Killers, which was one of their earlier ones, and then I got, I don't know, I forget the exact order, maybe Power Slave, and then I jumped over to one of the more progressive ones, and then A Matter of Life and Death came out, so I got that, and then I went back and got like Number of the Beast, so I like jumped all over their catalog, and I did the same thing with Dream Theater, where, I had Train of Thought, and I had Scenes from a Memory because my brothers had it. And those are still two of my favorite albums by them. They're fantastic. But, and this is like right, in the couple of years between Train of Thought and Octavarium was when I kind of like jumped in, went whole hog, and got caught up. So I picked up Awake, I picked up Images and Words, I picked up the original When Dream and Day Unite. And by the time I collected all of their, Falling to Infinity, I actually 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence I've heard bits and pieces of from, I think we had some live DVD of them playing. I'm not sure which one it was because they have a couple that are out around that time. But I heard some of the 6 Degrees stuff from that, but I didn't get the album actually until really recently, like a couple of years ago. Like I picked it up for the first time. I just grabbed it off of iTunes and was like, I need to have this album because I've heard so much about it and I want to hear it and I want to get the whole experience and I want that whole journey. I want to hear the first part of the 12-step suite. I want to get all the stuff that leads into what was Train of Thought. I want to hear, but yeah, and then
I like that album a lot. It's a great album.
It's really good. I like it too. I honestly like the first part of the album better. The first disc that starts with Glass Prison and does like there's a whole bunch of like shorter songs on it, and then the second disc is 6 Degrees itself, which is great. 6 Degrees is awesome.
Yeah, that's like the 2112 thing.
Yeah, the whole album is long and it's broken down into a bajillion different tracks, and it's a whole big crazy story, and I
gotta show you something. I don't think I showed you guys this yet. Speaking of Glass Prison is the reason why I have this.
Ooh,
Wow.
And that's an autographed drumhead from Mike Portnoy.
I did not know. How have we been? How have you never showed me that?
Look at that reveal.
Oh my god.
I had it sitting back there, and I just realized, I'm like, oh my god, I gotta mention this. The reason why is when I was teaching drums way back when in my past life, one of my drum students, George Roskus, who's a fantastic drummer now, he went away to college, and he was working on at the one radio station in college. Portnoy came in for an interview, so he got to interview Mike Portnoy, and he was talking to Mike about how I got him into Dream Theater, and through the song "The Glass Prison." And so Mike said, well, I'm gonna give Jeff this. I'm actually gonna write on, because usually Portnoy just signed his name and off he goes, but he wrote, to my, Jeff Bonomo right there. So that's pretty cool.
Oh man,
I still haven't framed it yet. But there it is.
That was one hell of a reveal.
Yeah.
I didn't know that either. That was like a Shyamalan reveal there. Twist.
Yeah, that came out of nowhere.
I know.
How many times have we talked about Dream Theater? And Jeff, you haven't showed me your signed drumhead from Mike.
Yeah, it's been sitting back there. I also found out today, I watched that video of them talking about Rush Moving Pictures. Mike Portnoy, for some reason, he lives in Pennsylvania, so we could probably hunt him down if we wanted to.
Oh,
really? I did not know
he
that.
mentioned that video that we posted on the Rock Talk with DocRocker group today about them talking about Rush. They're all talking in the beginning, and the drummer from Hailstorm's there, the drummer from Periphery, and the guy from Periphery is like, yeah, I still live in Pennsylvania, and the guy from Hailstorm's like, I still live in Pennsylvania, and Portnoy's like, I've been living in Pennsylvania for 20 years. I'm like,
I never knew that. I actually didn't watch that video. I just shared it.
Yeah.
I saw it had a whole bunch of drummers on it, and it was a whole big thing. I was like, I just got to post this on there and just get, generate some conversation, get people.
Interesting video, man. Really, really cool.
I'm going to check it out over the weekend. Totally.
Yeah. Anytime you hear Portnoy talk, because he can talk.
He's awesome.
Dream Theater I really liked was the drummer was the face of the band. I mean,
he was very vocal.
He did most of the interviews until he left, of course.
Yeah.
But a lot of that was his vision, I believe. He was, he helped start the band.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times drummers just sit in the background and people think they're stupid.
Yeah, the stereotype exists. It's unfortunate, but it's true. People think that they just kind of sit in the back. They just keep the beat, and they hit stuff with sticks, and play with their caveman toys, while all the real musicians do all the real work up front. That stereotype pisses me off to no end. That's my biggest gripe with the whole rock scene is no respect for drummers.
That's the famous joke. What do you call a guy who hangs out with musicians? The drummer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Got that from Johnny Morado.
Oh yeah, that's right. Was it him? Yeah,
probably.
Yeah, he is the Johnny Morano.
Yeah, like musicians parking only, drummers park in the rear. Like all that stupid crap. I hate that. I hate that so much.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the drummer for Dream Theater. He's been gone since 2010. Mike Mangini, who's playing now for Dream Theater, is doing a hell of a job. He's fantastic. Yeah.
He's one of the best drummers ever.
Yeah.
I posed this question to you before. Do you guys, and I'll pose it again, do you see Portnoy coming back to Dream Theater anytime? Do you see him back?
Yeah. I don't think it's ever going to happen.
I agree.
And at first that made me like real salty and sad, like, oh, that would be so great, and that really sucks. But now that they have a really good thing going with Mangini, and I feel like it wouldn't be fair to him for them to bring Portnoy back. I know there was some kind of contract thing where like Portnoy did approach Dream Theater a couple of years after his departure, and they had to say no to him returning. And at first I was like, oh, that sucks. They kind of kicked him out of the club and they're not going to let him back in,
Well, he's still in the club. I mean, he's still getting this. He probably didn't sign away all his rights to Dream Theater. Now, come on.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, so at first I was like, I'm not going to bother with any of their new stuff. Without Portnoy, they're not the same. And I've come around. I've definitely seen the error of my ways, because a lot of their new albums are nothing short of fantastic, arguably some of their best material. And not only that, but every time we talk about Dream Theater, I keep bringing up this other band, Sons of Apollo, because I feel like that's kind of like Portnoy's. Like, I really want to see him take that in a new direction with this other. It's like a super group with the musicians in that band, like across the board.
Great.
Yeah, and their most recent, 2020, is one of my favorite progressive rock albums of all time. And I had actually
heard that yet, Brendan?
What's that?
Have you heard Sons of Apollo 2020 yet?
Some of it, but I didn't get into. I was trying to catch up like crazy this week, and I heard some of it, and I'm trying to recall it. When he mentioned Sons of Apollo, I was like, oh yeah, you know. But I'd probably be more familiar with Liquid Tension Experiment and things like that.
Oh, okay.
Or Platypus even.
Yeah,
they had a band Platypus for a while.
I remember Platypus.
Yeah, but yeah, you're definitely, if you're anything of a Dream Theater fan, you owe it to
really
yourself to at least give. They got 2 albums that are out now. They got Psychotic Symphony, which came out I think in like 2017, and then they just put out 2020 in January of 2020, right before the whole. I was gonna go see them live right before COVID hit, and I didn't go, and I'm kicking myself so hard in the ass for not going to see them. But
well, it's interesting. I mean, because I had wondered. I'd only heard little bits and pieces of what happened to Derek Sherinian afterwards. I knew there was maybe some session work, things like that, but you know, he definitely wasn't, you know, doing what the other guys were doing, you know, putting out constant albums. So it's neat.
Yeah, he's doing it now, and it's awesome. And I'm looking forward to hearing more. I kind of want to keep things the way they are with all those guys. I kind of want to see Portnoy kind of continue, because he's got so many other bands he does too. I'm not a big fan of all of his other stuff. He's kind of more in like these kind of like more low key, like kind of alternative rock acts. Yeah, which is fine for me. Like that's a bit of a crying shame, you know, because
he was in Avenged Sevenfold.
He filled, that was a part of his departure. He filled in because their drummer died, I think.
Oh,
there was some kind of he got cancer or something. It was a whole big thing, and he went to fill in, and he ended up having a lot of fun with it. And he was kind of like stressing out with the whole like double dipping and doing all the stuff with Dream Theater. And he was like, guys, let's kind of take a break. Let me kind of focus on this other thing for a bit. And Dream Theater wanted to keep going. They were like, well, we have all this momentum now. We want to do a new album. So that was where they initially had their split. But even after Portnoy did a bunch of stuff with Sevenfold, and then he I remember like in recent like the last 2 or 3 years looking this up, I'm like, I wonder what else he did. So I wikied him and I saw like a whole list of all these other bands that he like played in since leaving Dream Theater. I was like, let me check them out. Let me do like an album or 2 from each of them. And most of them were like, oh yeah, it's totally Portnoy. You could hear him drumming and it's great, but it's in bands that I don't feel suit his playing or his creative energy. I think I don't want to say like he's too good for these bands, but I kind of like I want to see him.
Say he's too good for these bands.
Yeah, I want to see him in something like real, like wacky and experimental and progressive, and that was what Sons of Apollo was for me. Like, you know, they had like 2 or 3 songs that are like super famous off of their debut that are like a lot more straightforward, and then I heard God of the Sun for the first time, and it's like, oh, it's this like slow, kind of heavy, like whatever, and then like there's this bridge that comes out of nowhere, and it's this like super like 5-minute instrumental, just like nothing I've ever heard before, nothing I've even heard Dream Theater do before, and it like blew my mind, and I was like, this is one of my new favorite bands now. So let me do the full album. And then, and I remember around this time last year showing some other music friends about it. Like, you guys got to check out the Sons of Apollo group. And I went to look them up to pull up Psychotic Symphony. And sure enough, oh, dude, they have a new album? What? So I went through 2020 and most of last year, like I kept going back to that every couple of weeks, like going back.
That album is that album is so much better than their first one. The first one's good.
Oh, totally.
But
I would agree 100%.
Really solid. Now,
it rivals Dream Theater.
Look at the members. Look at who you have in that band. You have Jeff Scott Soto on vocals. You have Bumblefoot on guitar. And, okay, he did play with Guns N' Roses, but he's no slouch on guitar. Billy Sheehan on bass. Derek Sherinian on keyboards and Portnoy on drums. That is a super group. That is a progressive metal super group. And that album is really, really good. It's
and especially really... Brendan, as a guitar player, you would appreciate, you know, looking at Bumblefoot's rig. He has like this. I remember like watching some interviews and stuff with them after I got super into these guys. He's got this like double neck setup where the top neck is like a fretless. And it has like these like super like low strings, and he's doing all this like real wacky stuff. And then he's got like a standard neck underneath it, and he just flips between the two for like a whole bunch of songs. And you hear some like real interesting wacky stuff. And Sherinian's awesome on keys. There's this really fun indulgent guilty pleasure on Psychotic Symphony called Figaro's Whore, and it's just Sherinian just ripping on an organ for like 2 minutes. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm definitely, now I'm going to save that. And
I'm telling you, anyone who's into Dream Theater, give these guys a listen. They don't sound like Dream Theater at all, but they rival in terms of like, you know, just progressive entity of just what they're capable of. It's really like the singer is way different, you know. If you and that might be an appealing factor for a lot of Dream Theater fans. I know there's a lot of fans out there that aren't really crazy about James Labry, so this might be something of a breath of fresh air. But I personally am not too crazy on the singer for Sons of Apollo. He's growing on me just because I like the music so much and I'm listening to it a lot. But
I like Jeff Scott Soto's voice. I really do. And, you know, it's weird because some people don't like his voice for some reason. But to me, I think he's perfect for Sons of Apollo. Now, let's jump back to James's voice, because that's a contention with some people. Some people don't like how he sings. Some people do. I personally love the guy's voice, but it has seen better days. And I did a little research before, like I usually do, about why his voice has changed. And I found out, going way back to this December 29th, 1994, he was vacationing in Cuba and he caught a severe case of food poisoning. And while vomiting, he ruptured his vocal cords. He saw 3 throat specialists who all told him do nothing but rest for at least a year. However, in 1995, 1 month later, he went on tour with Dream Theater.
Oh, geez.
And he says that his voice never felt normal until around 2002, 2003. So he's been kind of like, you know, not 100% through the almost the whole time, you know, until, you know, maybe 8 years ago. So yeah, that's what happened. At least that's what the internet tells me happened. So
yeah, so it has to be true. But
well, you know, even if you listen to Live in Tokyo, and this was before '94, you can tell a lot of their music took it would take a toll on him. Like, I'm not, if you ever heard Live in Tokyo, which is one of my favorite live ones, just because it's so sort of raw and it looks like it's done in a high school gymnasium. So, you know what I mean? But if you listen to him, you could tell he's really, really struggling. And you could tell, like, after 15, 20 shows, you know, it's taken a toll on him. So, I mean, you know, he's always pushing it and pushing it and pushing it.
Yeah.
So I'm sure those instrumentalists, people are like, oh, well, where's the vocals? And I always say, Labry needed a break. You know, they're not going to burn their fingers out, but you will burn his voice out.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
so what do you think of him being the front man? What is it? Do you enjoy James's voice, or how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm one of those people who's a little goofy about it. I actually really don't like when James and even some of the other guys, when they do gang vocals. I don't like that at all. It's almost like they're trying to be something they're not, or they're trying too hard. Yeah. And you know, I remember the Pull Me Under video, they have that he's wearing the Napalm Death shirt, and I'm like, okay, like,
yeah, you know, that's right.
It's a nice homage, but I wouldn't try it, you know. So sometimes it drives me a little nuts. There's a little bit of it on Systematic Chaos and stuff. I hear it, and I just, you know, but it's one of those things. They're a progressive band, so they're always going to dabble for 5 seconds in something, you know. You'll even hear country every so often if you're listening close enough, and then they'll pull back. So it is one of those things. But yeah, I mean, James Labry, I love his voice for the most part, but there's certain things that he does that I wish they wouldn't get into. But that's not, I'm not making the money, so yeah, good on him.
I think he's more comfortable now with what he does compared to what he used to do. It seemed like he pushed it more, like you were saying, like in the earlier albums, just because that was the style he should be going for, almost like a power metal vocalist. Another band you could totally say is doing the same thing is Fate's Warning.
Yeah. Fate's
Warning, their vocalist, Ray Alder, will tell you straight up, he can't sing those high notes anymore. He smokes too much.
Yeah.
I watched an interview with him not too long ago. He's like, I don't even try to do it anymore because I can't. He's like, it's all gone. And he blames him, you know, he blames smoking.
And the weird thing is I actually like Alder slightly more than I do like Labry.
Oh,
That's
me too.
Weird thing. Yeah.
I love Ray Alder's voice. Yeah. Way more. Yeah, way more.
And I think he knows time signature changes a little better, you know. But that's me being nitpicky and a nerdy and annoying. So I definitely wouldn't get into that too much. It's just that's why I prefer Alder a little bit more.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do too. Fates Warning is my favorite prog rock band or prog metal band. You know, I put them higher than Dream Theater. I just love them, man. I really do. And Mark Zonder's my favorite drummer. I've actually, you know, really studied Zonder more than Portnoy actually. And they're very similar, but there's differences to how they play.
Yeah.
And we always call the guitar player from Fates Warning the anti-Petrucci, because he doesn't play a ton of notes, but every note he plays, he's almost like David Gilmour, like every note counts, you know?
Well, he's like if David Gilmour and Robert Fripp from King Crimson had a baby.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's really
That's a really fitting analogy. I like that.
Well, he has that pure prog playing style where the chord sounds like it's from Mars. Like you'll never figure out what it is without some sort of guide, because it's such a weird Alan Holdsworthy chord that you're like, what is it? Why does it sound so good but so crappy at the same time? It's one of those weird things. There's a few of them in the beginning of Monument, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
And you're like, it sounds good, but it also sounds like garbage. Like, how does that happen? And it works. How does it work?
Like I would say something like this: if me and you were in a band together writing original music, and you brought that to me and said, "Listen to this," I'd be like, "No."
Yeah. You think I was kicked in the head by a horse? You'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, it works.
You know, that's prog rock for you, but you know, getting back to Dream Theater, they do that too. Like there's something, take it apart and listen to it by itself. You're like, why the hell are you doing that? But it fits though. Like when everything else is in line with it, and you hear the whole song, it's like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, and that brings me to, I mean, there's this thing, and you know, people who play Dream Theater might recognize this, but God forbid, I'm going to bring up Iron Maiden again.
Yay!
The beginning of Wasted Years, the very beginning, that guitar riff, he's jumping down the scale on a single string. You know, I call it open string scale jumping. I'm sure that's not the name of it, but that's what he does.
It's a pretty accurate description, I would say.
Dream Theater, John Petrucci loves doing that. The keyboard, sort of separate keyboard guitar harmony in Learning to Live does it. It does it there. The whole solo in one of the slow songs on Images and Words does it there. Forsaken, he was doing it in there. He does it in the very first song on Systematic Chaos. In fact, it's kind of the root of that song. I guarantee whenever you hear a solid progressive Dream Theater instrumental, he's
playing with the open string.
Yeah, because it's audibly very pleasing, because it's you know, the same.
You're creating gaps. You know, you have those nice jumps of going up a third, then a fifth, and then a seventh, and then the ninth, and then you could do all your extensions.
Right. And it sounds it also has that octave, you know, matching where that harmony sounds real good. It's I always compare like harmonics, you know, those open jumps and octaves as like those very pleasing kind of safe things. And he adores playing those. I hear him so much, and that's not a slight on him. What it is it's a, you know, admiration at recognizing what works and perfecting it. And
and using it just enough that it complements almost everything he plays, but without, you know, venturing so far as to overdo it.
Right. And it's just so, it's fantastic. And like, hopefully, like if anybody hears this and says, oh yeah, like I've played that song, and he you know, always, you know, springs off of the notes of the scale into the open string, and then, you know, keeps bouncing around on the same string. I think Scenes from a Memory has that a really long part where they do that. That's actually a bass guitar harmony, a bass and guitar harmony, and it's low, and I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, but I learned that a few years ago. I put that on Facebook, and it was, my fingers were sore. Like I was just a mess. Yeah. That song was a mess, but it was fun doing, and you realize that this is the technique he loves to use. So
you're talking about like their influences. You mentioned Iron Maiden does the same kind of thing. Dream Theater is also known for doing like full cover albums. You know, yeah, they're bootleg, yeah, they're live, but they've done full cover albums of stuff, you know, from Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon to Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast. They did Master of Puppets,
Master
I
of
think.
Puppets.
Also. You know, so they've done a lot of covers of stuff that influenced them, you know, and the nice thing is it's a huge genre of music. I mean, like Master of Puppets doesn't have a lot in common with Dark Side of the Moon, but you meet in the middle and it's Dream Theater, you know, because they take from everywhere, and a lot of this cover albums, if you haven't heard them yet, I think they're fantastic. I was just listening to the Number of the Beast one today, just because it's kind of popped up. I also I didn't know they did a cover of To Tame a Land by Iron Maiden, which, wow, that's one of my favorite Maiden songs, man. And that's just they just did it fantastically well. It's just awesome. And what that second half of Change of Seasons, I think, is all
it's all covers.
right?
Yeah, they do a whole bunch of like real progressive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
In France.
Yeah, and that one, and Elton John.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God! I totally forgot. Me and Brendan used to do "Perfect Strangers" by Deep Purple, and we pulled it from the Dream Theater cover.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet that probably wouldn't have gone over if we played that in the bar, but you know, whatever.
Screw them. Who cares?
The medley they did off that album is one of the ones I used for a school project on writing, how to write music. And I actually chose the medley they used in that.
Don't they just call it the Big Medley?
The Big Medley.
I think it is. Yeah. So the Journey song and all that other stuff, I wrote that all out. And the Led Zeppelin song, the Journey song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I had to write that in and turn it in. So
yeah, they even throw in, if I remember right, they throw in some Kansas on that too, don't they? Do some stuff from Carry On Wayward Son?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A nice little bridge, you know, doom, 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 doom.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
Yes.
It's been a while since I listened to it. I don't remember.
No, good call.
Yeah. Yeah, that was I really like that album. The half of it is just one song. Change of Seasons is like,
it's one of those like 24 minutes or something crazy like that. It's just a big, long, crazy epic. It's fun.
Portnoy writing the lyrics, the drummer's writing lyrics again. Crazy.
Yep. Sacrilege.
And Neil Peart.
Yeah.
Damn drummers thinking when they're not
Neil
supposed
Peart
to.
and Phil Collins ruin it for everybody.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So if you had to pick one, your favorite Dream Theater album, what would it be? Brendan, what would your favorite Dream Theater album be?
I would just because of the nostalgia with Hanging Out With You.
No, thanks.
And sure. And the musicality involved and the fact that I was introduced on that. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, yeah, that's what everybody says, but it's just got a lot more to it. Images and words, you know, Scenes from a Memory comes very close, but Images and Words is definitely still my favorite.
Yeah, I'd say Images and Words for me, and Awake. Awake comes second for me.
Yeah, I love Awake. Awake is definitely one of mine. I would say my favorite.
You're going to say Systematic Chaos, though, right?
My favorite is Systematic Chaos by far. That I think is just their most solid album that's ever come out, and that was a big reason that we covered it last week as part of the homework.
Yeah. I can't believe I missed that. I listened to it when it came out, like a couple tracks, and it just didn't do it for me. I don't know
Brendan,
why.
You got to check it out. You got to go through that one if you're not too familiar with it. It came out right after Octavarium, a couple years.
Well, I'm going to start with I listened to it, and I also like I really like the song Forsaken, and I actually learned sort of half of it.
Okay.
Just because I do have this,
and that's all Petrucci. I think he wrote that one.
Yeah, because he always leads up to these sweeping it's just I sort of love that effect, and it's really everybody overuses it as a punch in the face. You always hear the quiet intro and then the drums kick in. But there's also another thing, especially Petrucci. Rush did this on like the song Witch Hunt, where they start with one little level, one instrument playing, then they add a second instrument and he's still playing pretty low, but eventually by the middle they're smashing you over the head with 6 instruments playing at once. And I love that kind of thing. And
like kind of pyramid sort of.
Yeah. And it just keeps building and building and building. And there's some of that on there. There's some of that string jumping on, what's wrong with me? The first song on there, the 2-parter.
Oh, Presence of Enemies.
Yeah,
Yes.
there's a lot of that string jumping, which I love, because it's not any guitar players out there. It's actually a pretty good at finger exercise too. Some of the stuff, that's where it's fun too.
Oh yeah, pretty much that opening riff, you know, do 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 do.
Yeah, that's that string
jumping.
just
using the
I'm
D.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never
That's
noticed
the
that.
one I was talking about. That's very Rush-like. You know, it's very Rush-like, that the intro in that song.
Yeah, and there's another one I was listening to, and that's the great thing about it too, is you can hear that their songs and pick out so many different things. The one part, I think it's in the second part of that, reminded me of Pink Floyd Animals so much. There's a really sort of steady keyboard part, almost a Hammond organ. I'm trying to remember, but I was like, wow, this is real Animals-y, you know.
It seems like they do that a lot. They'll do like almost like obvious nods to like bands that they love. I'm thinking 6 Degrees. I think it was The Great Debate. The song The Great Debate
that song.
sounds like Tool.
Yeah, it's got mad Tool vibes. Tool? Yeah, that's
and
the
you
one.
know, if you dig into it and you look deep enough on the internet, you'll find somebody from Dream Theater in an interview saying, yeah, that was on purpose. It sounds like Tool because we said, hey, let's write something that sounds like Tool, you know?
Same thing because they can. It's like the ultimate form of flexing. I love it.
Like that one song on Systematic Chaos that sounds like Injustice for All era Metallica for a little bit.
Constant Motion, yeah.
Yeah, Constant Motion.
Super
and then it becomes Dream Theater. Yeah. It's great. You know, I like that about them. Like, they're not even afraid to be like, yeah, here's our nod to Pink Floyd. Here's our nod to Metallica. Here's our nod to Maiden and Rush and, you know, Tool and whatever. It's cool because they can do that. You know, any other band probably couldn't get away with it.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the reason.
Definitely a kaleidoscope.
Yeah, and these guys, like this genre, progressive music, especially, their players, their bands don't make it as big, but they're the musicians who get poached by bigger acts, you know.
Sure.
I need somebody who can definitely play this and knows what he's doing. Okay, well, you know, we've got this perfect guy, you know, Steve Morse. There you go. Here's your guy.
Yeah, ultimate session guitarist.
Yeah, so
bar none.
They're always getting poached, you know. I hear their hooks all the time, because in one progressive song there's 38 hooks. And you pick them out, and then next thing you know, you'll listen to another person's song, like a pop music song, and it's like, that's that hook, you know. And it's like they stole that hook, and you know, it's a hook, you can't, but at the same time, you know where it kind of came from, because they're so up here, you know, that they can write 38 hooks in one song and not care. You know, it's just kind of amazing. That's what amazed me about progressive music is, you know, I was like, wow, just where did they come from? It's like they came from another universe to all play together in one band, you know, and how does that happen? But
it's like some comic book level stuff.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Avengers assemble, and you get like all this different, from different dimensions, different universes, different planets, and like, all right, let's like put this like band of 5 together and have this like ultimate team that can just do anything.
Yeah, it's like a dream team, you know. It's just Dream Theater, but it's just unbelievable that many people can run into each other and just start playing. I'm like, how does that happen? You know, I can't even balance my checkbook, and like, how are there these people? It's amazing to me.
And you know what else is amazing? It amazes me how stacked John Petrucci is right now. I mean, that guy looks like he can kill a bear, especially with the beard.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that the other day because Danton, your brother Adam, sent me a text message a little while ago, and he said, when did John Petrucci get so stacked? I'm like, I don't know, man.
He's been like that for a couple of years now, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember even a couple of years ago, when I was like getting like super into guitar, I watched there's a guitar channel that I follow on YouTube, and they do like a whole like, you know, they bring in like different artists to like showcase their signature models and stuff. And there's a whole episode on Petrucci where he comes in and he plays with his Majesty guitar or whatever. And I remember looking at him there, and he's like, his arm is like the size of his guitar's body.
Yeah.
You know, it's
just a little guitar.
Yeah, the guitar looks like a ukulele.
Yeah, and it's a full-size guitar with you know 7 strings. It's even a little bigger than a regular guitar, and it looks so tiny when he's holding it.
It looks like he's playing a violin.
Yeah,
well, he's keeping himself in shape, I guess.
Yeah, who the hell knows what he's doing with himself?
He's got the resources and probably has the Well, that's all I'll say about it. But yeah, he did get big very quickly. So creatine.
Good for him, man. All the power to him.
Now we're going to be testing musicians for performance enhancing drugs.
It's only a matter of time.
So that's why he writes so well.
The beard, I think it's the beard that he grew.
That's
yeah, crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely part of it.
So what do you guys see like as the future of Dream Theater? Where can they go from where they're at? Like what's ahead for them, you think? Do you ever think that they're going to be looked at like Rush is looked at?
Yeah, like that's the wonderful thing about a band like Dream Theater is I wouldn't be able to tell you in a million years what they're planning to play next or how they're planning to sound. And that's why I love it. It's like constantly getting tripped up. And Rush was like that too. If you go from album to album to album, they changed and added so much significantly over the years that it's, they're unrecognizable from Clockwork Angels to their first album.
Sure, yeah.
Well, let's say their second, because that's
go from Fly By Night. Yeah, start from Fly By Night. Yeah.
So Dream Theater is going to be very, very similar with just elements of their roots, because obviously as they've gotten better, their music has got more solid and their taste gets more solid. So a lot of times when I hear something that they do that I don't like, I question myself, not them. It's like,
I like this.
Yeah, where do I suck? Like, where does my brain broken that I don't like? Like, what don't I understand that they're doing? And that's one of those things. So for me, it's almost like a bad relationship because I'm trying to figure out why I'm at fault, not them. So, but it's a great way to be, and it's a great way to be for something like that. It's kind of a great hobby to have, to listen to such great people and know they're always going to try their best. They're never going to not try to deliver what they know they can. So, and that's another thing I love about it. So,
I don't think they get enough attention as they should, really, even now. And I don't think they ever will. Their highest single on the rock charts was Pull Me Under, almost 30 years ago. Yeah. So, but they're not chasing that either, and they don't need to because they have such a great fan base. They don't really need to. So that's another good thing about this type of music. There are lots of fans. Mm-hmm. They're not going to be on TV. They're probably never going to get to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, unfortunately.
Yeah. But as far as that's concerned, who cares?
Yeah.
It's definitely not why they're doing it.
No.
And people are turning down the Hall of Fame now anyway. So
I get the feeling if they ever did make the Hall of Fame, half of their fans wouldn't even know about it because they probably don't care. They're like, oh, wait, when did that happen? Oh, 3 years ago? Wait, what? Oh, well, whatever. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I still love them. I'm still listening to them every day. So whatever, it's kind of, it's a more, like I said in the beginning, they're musicians. Like that band exists solely for the purpose of pleasing guys like us that play, and have experience and can dissect and pick the stuff apart. And they're doing it for us as much as they're doing it for themselves, and if they wanted to, I think, and I hate to boast about the band, but I feel like if they wanted to write a chart topping hit, Pull Me Under, they could have probably sometime in the last 30-year time span, but it's clearly not their goal because they're not doing that.
Well,
I think the only time they tried, I think, to write like poppier songs was Fall Into Infinity. That album has some shorter.
Vivarium too has some shorter stuff. They kind of went for more like a chill sort of thing where it's not super crazy. But even then, almost every song has a crazy cool bridge that's some of their best.
But even when they're trying to write pop music, they're like, we got to throw something in.
Yeah, we just got to get crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you do 4/4 time? Not for more than 3 measures.
we gotta just either chop a beat or add a beat every fourth bar, just to kind of keep it moving, just to shake it up. Yeah. And we could alternate. We're gonna chop the first time through, and then we're gonna add one the second time through. It's amazing how much I love stuff like that. They are such an influence on the things I like to write.
Yeah.
Where so much of what I write is just directly inspired by just listening to Dream Theater. I want to try to do stuff like that. And that would be awesome.
If you can do it, it says enough about you. Because like I said, 4/4 is one thing to be able to write in 4/4 where people aren't gonna throw tomatoes at you. If you can write in 9/8 or whatever goofy, I've seen really goofy combinations. What's the one is 7 + 5/8 was the one time signature in Metropolis. I remember.
Oh, yeah.
It was 7 + 5/8, and I had to look that up. Like, am I crazy that's what I'm hearing, or is that? And sure enough, that's what it was.
Yeah, pretty much alternating bars of 7 and 5.
Yeah, and I was really proud of myself for even being able to pick that out. But
it's actually easier to write it that way because like the average layman would say, well, why don't you just put 12/8? If you add the numbers, but it actually makes sense to count, the 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 3 and separate the 7 and the 5. See, I live for this kind of stuff. I can sit here and just go into all the goofy counting stuff.
My head's hurting already.
Yeah, and like I said, it's the type of music that if you can get this down, that's 80% of the battle. You can play anything, anywhere, anytime. Somebody needs you in a band to play Taylor Swift, and you've just gotten done playing, Systematic Chaos. It's like,
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No problem.
You don't even have to hear the Taylor Swift song first. You just give me a chart. I'll figure it out. I can just jump in and play it.
Exactly. And that's why. I mean, it's like practicing. I did hear something funny the other day. I read something funny, and it was on one of their YouTube videos, and they said, and I thought it was so great because it was two worlds for me colliding. He said, Dream Theater should be playing all the music for every Final Fantasy boss battle ever from now on.
Oh, man. That is a world that should definitely collide, because Nobuo Uematsu has like some real like mad prog chops.
Oh, that's
as a composer.
Berkeley was nothing but Japanese guitar students. It was unbelievable. And they were all here.
Yep.
Like they were all ridiculous. And it was really intimidating. But yeah, the music on that is great. But yeah, when I read that, I was like, that's classic.
It would be perfect. You could easily put that stuff in for a boss battle.
All the boss battles.
Yeah.
Or
Dark Souls.
True. See, I'm still in Mega Man mode where it's just one like catch-all boss battle jingle that goes throughout the entire game, and that's all you need. I've only played one Final Fantasy game. I did 10, but I really liked it, and that's the one that has the Rammstein track at the end.
I think so, yeah.
When you're fighting Jekt. Yeah. This and like this giant monster form of Jekt comes out, and it's just oh my god! I remember hearing that for the first time. Like, this is awesome! I gotta play all of these games. And there's
to speak of that, like briefly, if you've probably heard of Dark Souls.
Yes. All
Dark Souls bosses are written according to musical measures. So they attack in 2-2 or 2-4 or 4-4.
Oh, that's cool. I never played those games.
Maybe that's why I suck at it.
Jeff, if anyone should be able to figure it out, it should be you.
Well, the thing is the one boss that trips everyone up that nobody can figure out.
What is he, like in 7 or something?
3-4.
Oh, okay.
He attacks in 3-4, and it, like, honestly, this guy broke down the whole thing, and I was like, holy crap, he's right. How did I not pick up? I felt stupid too, but he's right. And sure enough, this one guy that's 3-4, there's only certain people who are really good at it. And sure enough, they're
probably musicians,
classical musicians.
Well, I'm going to reinstall Dark Souls right now, actually, because I took it off my computer. It was too hard for me, but I'm going to get back and I'm going to play. I'm going to beat that damn game.
now you have to. You didn't know you needed a sheet music thing though for it.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. Now you have a cheat.
Yeah. Hey, just got.
I'm gonna reinstall that game this weekend, because you've mentioned it many times to me, Brendan, and I can't get past the first guide, so I gave up.
Once I heard about that 4-4, like that he does it in measures, I was like, oh, I'm sold.
I like that. That's cool. And a lot of these video game composers, for especially like the Japanese role-playing game type of games, they do sound like prog metal. They do sound like prog rock, because they are probably
there's lots of real down
stuff. Yeah, doing the same thing,
and they're fantastic. Yeah, they really are. Some of the guitar work is mind blowing.
Yeah,
absolutely,
and they probably pull a lot of it from they're probably Dream Theater fans.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, they're really huge over in Asia, aren't they? In Japan, especially.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh yeah.
I
Japan.
absolutely wouldn't be surprised.
Japan loves them.
Well, you know how we always say on the show that everywhere in the world has better taste in music than America. So
yep.
Yes.
So all right, let's wrap things up about Dream Theater. Give me your final thoughts on Dream Theater, and then we'll say goodnight.
Yeah, Dream Theater, like I said, once I heard it, once I acclimated to it, no other band has ever replaced them. People have come relatively close. And I feel kind of silly saying that but I fell out with music for a long time. But what brought me back to music in 2015 was Dream Theater. Again, I heard Images and Words. Actually, I found my notation book on Images and Words. So I was like, I should be doing this again. I bought a John Petrucci signature 7-string guitar, of course. So that was the guitar I got, and off I went. So for me, it's just one of those bands. Once you get it and once it clicks, you're going to want more and more and more and more. It becomes like audible heroin. You just can't stop.
Obsession, yeah.
And you don't want a rehab. You're good, so.
Yeah.
I agree on what you said as far as like getting into it. Once it clicks with you, you got it. And you really could appreciate what they're doing on any level. You don't have to. I really don't think you have to be a musician. It helps, but I don't think there's something that you could find, since they're so vast as far as what they sound like. Their sound changes from almost song to song, album to album. So there's something in there for everyone. And I think they write enough catchy hooks and melodies that you can listen to it if you give it a chance. A lot of times people will go into Dream Theater and they'll hear like the middle part of Under a Glass Moon, and they'll be like, oh no, that's not for me. It's too complex. I can't understand it. But it's like, well, listen to the chorus of it, or listen to the the verses, and you'll hear that there's a lot of melody in there. There's a lot of catchiness to it, and once I got past the whole, well, it doesn't sound like Iron Maiden through the whole album. I still love Images and Words. I love it more now than I did back when I first heard it. Same thing with Awake. Train of Thought is another fantastic album. But yeah, I still think there's non-musicians can enjoy it also. I think you don't have to be a musician,
definitely.
but it does help. It does help.
Yeah.
And if you are a musician, there's something that they do that's for you. You could definitely find something. I would say my closing thought would be go listen to the newer stuff. Check out the albums that came out after Portnoy left, because they didn't lose any of their momentum. I listened when it first came out to A Dramatic Turn of Events, and it was like, all right, cool. They got the new drummer and it's great. And they're still Dream Theater, and they have some really great songs on that. I for one did not care much for the Astonishing, like this like big super album they did that Petrucci basically had. He was like the head writer, I think, for a lot of what they did for that album. I listened to that, and I think that was what kind of did it for me, of like, I don't really care about their newer stuff. But they have other ones that came out after that. They have a self-title that's like real tight knit with like some real incredible music. Some of their best, I would say. And then I think their most recent one is called Distance Over Time. That one's really good too. So, especially like for you guys, if you haven't heard those albums out, go on Spotify, check them out, download them, buy CDs, pirate them, whatever you have to do, go pirate them.
Go pirate them.
Disclaimer.
So yeah. And for anyone watching, if you're trying to get into these guys, check out, you really can't go wrong. You can kind of throw a dart at like a whole, just here's their discography and then just go with it and see what they have to offer. But yeah, I feel like a lot of fans like me kind of like fell out with them after Portnoy left. And I think that's doing the band a huge disservice, because they have a lot of really incredible music that they've been putting out since. And like I said, I heard a couple bits and pieces off of those newer albums, and I started kicking myself really hard in the ass of like, all right, I'm going to go actually get those, and I'm going to listen to them over and over and get just as familiar with those as I am with the ones that I know and love. Yeah. So, and I highly suggest any Dream Theater fan out there do the same.
And of course, every week you're going to find probably one post on the Rock Talk with DocRocker board about Dream Theater, because there's a lot of Dream Theater fans on that board. If you're not a member of the group, go to Facebook, go to Rock Talk with DocRocker Facebook group, become a member. And of course, gong that bell and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because the more subscribers we have, the more content we make. I'd like to thank Brendan Patrick Silliman, guitar extraordinaire, coming on with us and talking about Dream Theater tonight. Thank you very much, Brendan. It's great to see you again.
Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Well, we'll bring you back on when we talk prog or anything you want, really. Maybe we'll start talking about Mystery Science Theater. Who knows? The bots are in the back.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, not to mention your t-shirt.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time on Rock Talk with the Doc Rocker.